This is the Lumix S1 Mark II, and if you're in the market for a new Lumix camera, then today might be your lucky day because they released not one but two new cameras and a brand new first of its kind 24-60 f2.8. We're gonna go take out a beautiful Porsche 718 Spyder, which is a beautiful car, and so a beautiful camera paired with a beautiful car equals hopefully a good video. So let's go out and shoot. We're gonna talk about what's new on this camera and practically what I love about it. So here it is, a long-awaited video-centric new camera from Lumix, the S1 Mark II. If you're a video-heavy shooter, then this is probably the camera that you've been waiting for, but Lumix says that this is their video-focused camera. So what have they put in here? Well, they've got a 24-megapixel sensor that is now partially stacked. Now that's pretty cool, and apparently this means that they can get a faster readout while also getting an incredible image quality. If you're a photo-heavy shooter, then the S1R2 might be more what you're looking for, as it has a higher megapixel sensor, so maybe more photo focused. Practically, what I love about this sensor is that it shoots open gate at 5.1K up to 60 frames per second. So now you're not just limited to open gate in 24 or 30 frames per second, but you have slow motion. So that's huge for me, as I'm often working with clients where they need both deliverables for YouTube or horizontal and vertical output. So being able to use slow motion with the open gate is a pretty mind-blowing feature, to be honest. I'm so stoked on that. Continuing on in specs, you have 4K 120 frames per second and you have 240 frames per second at full HD. Now, as you may know from the S1R2, once you go into 120 frames per second, you lose subject detection. So what they've offered us now is, in some of their cinema 4K options, is that you can still shoot up to 96 frames per second and get subject detection. Now you have to be shooting in their new cinema 4K mode for that, which we'll get into because it's actually a really beautiful file format. One thing that I really wanted to test in this camera is the new dual native ISOs. So its natural dual native ISO is at 640, and different now from the S5 II and 2X, the second native ISO is actually 5000. So I did a really practical test here because I wanted you guys to see what this practically means. So we went out late at night, and as you can see here, as you start moving up the ISO range, once you hit 4000 here, you can see quite a bit of noise in the image. Still usable, of course, but once you go over to 5000, you can see it really cleans up a ton. And if I color grade this to actually look how it looked that night, well, you can see that we aren't really seeing any noise in the image at all. Another feature they've tossed into this camera is a dynamic range boost. So I did a really practical test here again, just so we could actually see what that looks like. So there's no better way to test the dynamic range than to come out with a beautiful Porsche at noon and let's test the dynamic range. So right now we've got all of our settings. We've got F11. We are currently at a +2/3 exposure. We've got a native ISO of 640. So I mean, if we look at the waveform, we still have tons of available data. So I'm gonna push this until the waveform kind of hits our 100 mark, but so far that looks incredible still on the waveform. So that's at an aperture of 5.6. We're hitting +2 2/3 on the exposure meter. So we're gonna turn on dynamic range boost, which apparently gives us an extra stop of dynamic range in the highlights. Now that does change our base ISO to 1000. So I'm just gonna hit record here. We're at an aperture of f5.6, ISO 1000. I'm still not seeing any full blowouts in the highlights there on the waveform. But if I go to a more proper exposure there, that means we have tons of data here. So right now this is like worst case scenario dynamic range. It's almost noon, the sun's right above us, so much contrast, tons of bright white clouds and a dark black car. So having 15 stops of dynamic range in this camera is huge. Now when you turn on the dynamic range boost, apparently you do get a lot worse rolling shutter. So for situations like this where we're maybe setting up a frame, it's ideal. But if you're going to be shaking your camera a lot or doing a lot of movement, then maybe less ideal for those kind of scenarios. But you still have 14 stops of dynamic range in your normal mode as well. So pretty sufficient if you ask me. I'm trying to cup the audio here so you guys can hear me. Hopefully it's not terrible. One thing I'm really excited about with the S1 Mark II is that with a firmware update, they're actually going to be releasing Arri log into the camera, which Lumix already has a really beautiful profile, and that's why I went with this camera or with the Lumix S5 II in the first place, is because I love the look of Vlog. But Arri is one of the most coveted video cinematic looks on ever. So to be able to have access to that in these camera bodies is going to be bonkers. I'm really excited about that, and we're going to get all the Arri LUTs and conversion looks and all those things. So pretty insane that we're going to be able to get that in a really diverse and easy to use camera body. Another great look that they've given us in this camera is what's called Cine-like A2, and this is Lumix's version of, if you just want to put a great look on your camera, shoot and put this out into the world right away without having to color grade your Vlog or Arri log, well then you have now this Cine-like A2 profile, and it looks pretty good. You might be able to throw on a finishing LUT, like if you wanted to buy my Car Creative finishing LUTs, then you could, and you could put them on this footage and it would look really good. And speaking of really good, Lumix continues to be the best in industry with 8 stops of in-body image stabilization. If you have ever seen what boost image stabilization looks like, let me show you. This is what it kind of looks like walking around with the camera with normal stabilization on. But I've turned on the 24-60, the function button on the lens, where I can turn it into boost IS mode, and it looks like a freaking tripod. So if you're hand holding and you need to get that shot, then you can use that boost IS and those 8 stops of image stabilization, and you're gonna have really stable footage. So there's tons of footage on the internet about how good the Lumix in-body image stabilization is, and it has only gotten better. I want to show you guys all the different frame rates and codecs that you guys can do in this camera. So starting at FHD, you can do 420 8-bit all the way up to 240 frames per second in full HD, and that's at 422 10-bit long or all intro, which is great. Then you have 4K all the way up to 422 10-bit all intro or all I as well. And then you get tons of these like really cool cinematic modes I want to show you as well. Cinematic 4K, and it's automatically cropped like this, so if you're into shooting this type of way, it's beautiful as well. We'll get into some of the anamorphic things that you can do later on tonight when we're going to go shoot some sunset stuff. And then here's where it gets really cool. We've got 5.1K open gate, 420, and you can still get up to 60 frames per second in 5K, which is just crazy. I think it's 5.1K they give you. And then here we have 6K open gate 30. So tons and tons and tons of epic frame rates that you guys can use. It also has AI now, phase detect autofocus, which to me it's pretty sticky. So this is it kind of working now. I don't know if I go off screen what it looks like and where it's going, but this is how it kind of pulls focus on my face. And now they've also added breakdance mode. So if you're kind of doing funky stuff with your limbs, it can still track you. I am not flexible at all, so you won't be seeing that in this video, but if you like to bend, it can catch your focus. Yeah, but I use the car one mostly. I love shooting cars, so you can shoot planes, trains, cars, cats, people, breakdancers. It's really cool. It's really great what they've got going on. So this is that Cinema 4K mode. I believe it's like 2x4x1. Really, really interesting frame rate if you want to get that super cinematic look without having to do this in post. This is all done in camera, so it's kind of a cool look if you're into this kind of thing. And what's cool about this particular resolution size is that you can still get all the same tracking features like automotive or human tracking features that still work all the way up to 96 frames per second. It's kind of slick. See, it still works, still works, still works. Now in this particular image, we have a 3.3K crop into the APS-C sensor. Now this is essentially like using a micro four thirds camera, but what's really cool about this is if we put an anamorphic lens on there, we're gonna be able to squish down this image. So let's do that. So if you just anamorphic de-squeeze this image in 3.3K APS-C style sensor, you pretty much get a 16:9 image here, which is super cool. Similarly here, so we are in now 5.1K open gate. So this means that if again we squish down the image using the anamorphic And this is one of the huge benefits that these cameras offer, that you're getting a lot more real estate and landscape, and this is also in 60 frames per second. You can see they've also significantly improved the anamorphic in-body image stabilization. It's not perfect, but it is much better. And look at that beautiful car. Oh my gosh. And you can live anamorphic de-squeeze. So we're gonna go ahead and do that so we can actually get a sense of what we're looking at on screen. As you may know, the S1 Mark I was actually quite a bit beefier and bigger. This now has taken a step back in size, which I personally like. On the top here, you have a photo and video switch, which can bring you in from photos to video to S&Q modes. And then in each of those modes, essentially you turn into a completely different camera, and you have 5 custom settings on the dials here that you can change to be whatever you want. And even inside of custom 5, I think you can do like 10 or 20 other custom settings. So no shortage of custom settings. On the back of the camera, we have a 5.76 million dot OLED viewfinder, which essentially means that it's really good looking when you look in there. And because I was shooting in really bright conditions, I did find myself using that quite a bit, and it works fantastic. 5.76 million dots is a lot of dots to look at, so you should be happy. You have this incredible tilt fold screen, which means you can essentially move this screen anywhere you want to and without limitations. So this is kind of like the best case scenario for a camera body. Lots of customizable buttons, lots of switches. You can lock the switches as well. Of course, you have the SD card slot, and you have a CF Express, I believe Type B card in there as well. So if you need to capture some ultra high quality, maybe it's RAW, maybe it's ProRes that you need to capture, then this camera can do it. When it comes to your photo modes, you can now shoot 10 frames per second with blackout free burst shooting. And if you're using your electronic shutter, you can get up to 70 frames per second in photo mode, which is kind of mind-blowing if you think about it, but you're gonna start hitting some different issues there with rolling shutter when you're using just the electronic shutter mode. So be aware of that. If you need to capture those really crispy, sharp photos, or you're shooting action sports or cars and you don't want any warping, you might want to stick to the mechanical shutter. The pricing of the S1 Mark II is going to be 4,600 Canadian and about 3,200 US dollars at launch. So it's a pretty great price point. And I'd love to do a bit more of a comparison between the S1 R2 and the S1 II. So let me know in the comments if you guys are interested in a bit of a comparison. Now, Lumix has also released the S1 IIe, which is essentially the same camera with a ton of great features, but they have throttled it down a little bit. Now, that camera still sits beautifully between the S5 II and the 2X and the S1 Mark II. Man, that's so many numbers and letters, but it's a super capable camera. So highly recommend going and watching some reviews on that. If you're looking at getting the S1 IIe, the price point on that is going to be 3,600 Canadian and 2,500 US dollars. So you're going to get the new body style with that camera, the 2 card slots, and a whole bunch of great internal video features. So tons of great launches today from Lumix. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I always recommend watching more than one video before you make a judgment call, so I also recommend my buddy Josh over here. He's pretty keen and smart and loves the techie stuff of these cameras, so go check out his video if you want a more tech central video. If you guys came to this video first and you want to go see the release of the 24-60, we shot some cool cars. I'll leave that video up there. If you guys enjoyed this, feel free to subscribe to the channel, drop a like and a comment down below, and I do hope I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.